Tell you why I've always struggled with mainstream advice. Like, it's a season, it'll pass. And I'm not saying I disagree with it. I struggle with it because of two fundamental concepts that I hold.
Part of me that wanted to judge myself and be like, well, you should have behaved better with the kids. You should have been more patient. You should have been more this. You should have been more that.
Yeah.
And then there's the part of you that's like, you know what? It didn't feel good in the moment. And that's okay. Like, let that go. You don't need to judge yourself or anybody else in the process for it.
You can change your expectations, or you can change your life blueprint, your experience of life. Mm-hmm. Seema, let's talk today about that dreaded slump. You know that feeling of where people are like, you know what? I just feel like I'm in a slump. I just feel like I'm stuck. I'm not motivated to do anything. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. I think especially when we're driven by external measures of success, right? Like, did you get a good grade on that test or not, right? When you're a little kid. And as you get older, there's these benchmarks and you're expected to sort of tick these boxes off. And it doesn't account for just the normal human cadence and ebbs and flow of life.
Yeah. But what if those expectations are things that we expect for ourselves?
Absolutely.
Right? And that we put on ourselves, like, I want to go to the gym and I just feel a little burnt out. I don't feel like going to the gym, or I need to clean the garage because of whatever reason, and I just don't feel like doing it. And I feel like my level of interest and effort is sort of in the toilet.
Yeah, I think that resonates a lot. There's a bathroom in my house that I've been meaning to organize for, I don't know, months, if not years.
Yeah.
I just don't really feel like I want to do it. But importantly, I feel like I think it's normal. I think it's to be expected that there's going to be times where you're going to feel more motivated to do things. You're going to be more inspired. You're going to more easily receive insights for creativity and connection. And then there's times where even the normal daily things that you're used to doing, right? Going to the gym is a part of, I know for you, a routine, for me, a routine. And sometimes it's just going to feel harder. It's going to feel more difficult to get started or sometimes even finish.
Yeah.
And for me, I know I wind up definitely judging myself when I'm not performing at 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've always struggled with that, of like, it's normal, right? And accepting that it's normal to not feel like going to the gym. And I'll tell you why I've always struggled with that kind of, sort of mainstream advice. Like, it's a season, it'll pass. And I'm not saying I disagree with it. I struggle with it. Because of two fundamental concepts that I hold, is that our feelings aren't necessarily dictating what we do and don't do, right? I don't feel like paying taxes ever. In my 46 years of life, I've had at least 20 times where I've had to pay taxes, and I've never felt like paying them. I've never been like, I'm super motivated to do it. I'm really excited to get it done. Never felt like doing that. Same with changing a dirty diaper. I've never been like 2:00 in the morning. Can't wait. I'm so lucky that I get to change this diaper tomorrow morning, but it's got to get done. So you put your feelings aside and you marshal on and you do the thing that needs to be done just because it's got to get done, not because you're waiting for inspiration or it's normal not to feel it or whatever. What do you think about things like that?
I mean, it's, to me, not the same thing, because there's things that you're going to have to do and there's no choice. And so then your choice becomes, what's the attitude I want to move forward with that
Exactly.
way, right?
Yeah.
So paying taxes, changing a diaper, I would hope that's not a choice for you. Those are things where how you're feeling about it really, it becomes less relevant. But I'm talking about more things like when I get on the yoga mat, there's days and weeks and even months where I'm like, man, I feel really good in my practice.
Yeah.
And then there's days like right now, even where I'm like, I mean, it just doesn't feel as joyful. It feels harder for me to do. And that doesn't mean that I won't do it.
Right.
And I'm acutely aware that I can still shift my experience of it by being grateful and, I have time, I have a space, I can move my body, all of those things. But it doesn't mean that it is going to necessarily feel as good as it has or it can.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people can get stuck. Is like this, we all operate on rhythms. We all operate on cycles. And just like there's a winter and a summer or a day or a night, there's going to be seasons where you're going to feel more inspired, more connected, more authentic to yourself. And then there's going to be times where you're like, it just feels hard and sticky.
Right.
And when we start to judge ourselves for the fact that not everything is operating smoothly 100% at 100% of the time, that's what creates this suffering, if you will.
Yeah, no, I can get behind that. I'm a firm believer that how you feel is simply just a feeling. It's not indicative or shouldn't dictate anything that you do or don't do, right? And there's going to be times where you feel great, and there's going to be times where you feel absolutely awful, and that's part of the human experience. But what I'm hearing you saying is that when we do something with that feeling, that what's the consequence of when we do something with that feeling?
It's interesting. There's a lot of times where I feel like we force our way through life.
Yeah.
And we say, well, it has to get done. So muscle up, buttercup. It just has to get done, right? You and I were having a conversation yesterday about something that I had on my to-do list. And you recognized very quickly that there was just too much resistance there. And I don't think that we give ourselves permission enough times to say, you know what, I'm going to ease up on the gas pedal a little bit here and either defer it or just not do it, because you know what, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Do you think those things, that approach works for things where we have the luxury to say no? Because remember, we were talking about that diaper, right? Where we have something just has to get done.
Yeah.
Right. And when we have a choice, or when we have the luxury to defer it, or to let the way we feel about it or the energy we're getting from that thing, then we have the choice of sort of deferring it. Because like you think back to like people, I'm sure in Austin is the same. You'll see people working like 2 shifts, right? Like they work in the grocery store, and then at night they work somewhere else. And a lot of parents work really hard. And they kind of did what you were saying, is sort of just muscle up, buttercup. This has got to get done. We need to do this. And I'm not debating their propriety of whether they need to do it or not. We're not, to them, they needed to do it, so they did it.
Right.
So do you think like we have this choice of deferring or deflecting when it's sort of like, oh, there's no real consequence attached to it, or we're not seeing a real consequence to it?
I mean, it depends on what it is. I think we get to decide, every one of us gets to decide what is a luxury that we can defer. And that's a luxury, right? The ability to even consider, do I have to get this done or not?
Yeah.
Changing that dirty diaper that is your duty, right? That's on your plate and it must get done. Paying taxes, that's not a choice. If you're in a position in life where you need to work those 2 shifts, then, you need to work those 2 shifts.
What do you say to those people who are feeling like less than inspired or not really interested? It's been on my to-do list, like the bathroom, right? What do you say to the person whose thing that they have to do is to get that bathroom done?
Like that's their job. It's not their choice.
They don't have a choice. They don't have any other bathroom in the house. And if they don't fix this bathroom today, I'll tell you, like, if, for example, last night I was working, I went for a walk, I was working, I came back, about 11 o'clock, my internet went out. In the entire house, there was no internet. And one of the worst things to do I won't tell you who my internet provider is because they're a client. So I won't disparage them. But one of the worst things to do for me is to call customer service and wait on hold, right? And so at 11:30 last night, I reset the router, I unplugged stuff, and I plugged stuff back in. It didn't work. And I was like, F it. We're all adults. I'm going to bed. Maybe it'll be fixed in the morning. I woke up this morning at 5:30 and still no internet. And, we got work to do. Everything is down. The entire house is connected. I'm on the app. I'm on the website. Customer service doesn't open till 8 o'clock. I do the call back. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking that you wanted to record. Maybe you wanted to record this morning. If we don't have any internet, I'm going to have to tell you. I did not. No part of me wanted to call the 1-800 number and go through the online test, the reset button. Are you connected on the computer? Let's give you a code. 50 minutes is what it took to reboot. None of it wanted to be done.
Yeah.
And I had the luxury of not working today. I had the luxury of going to my office. I had the luxury of working from a coffee shop. All those things I had.
Yeah.
But I muscled up and I just did it, gritting my teeth and being angry about it internally. What do you say to someone who just doesn't have the luxury? They just got to get it done. Or they do have the luxury and maybe there's a tip to where you can create the urgency to get it done. Because everybody's life is better today, right? Because the internet's working.
Yeah, exactly. I think regardless of what that is, the goal in life is to learn to be at peace no matter what is happening, right? So you can be angry about it, fine. Right. But I think my whole, when I experience the slump, what I would really like to do is recognize that I'm forcing and just shift my energy enough to say, all right, how can I be at peace amongst all of this? Like my inner sense of joy and peace, is it really so fickle that I'm going to let it be dictated by whether or not I want to get on the yoga mat or whether the internet is working or not? Or, sometimes even in business, like businesses go through cycles of great versus meh versus, it's not always operating at an exponential rate of growth.
Yeah.
And I think what we get when we get into trouble and create our own suffering is when we start to fight that. Yeah. And when we can learn to just sort of recognize, okay, it's hard right now. All right.
Yeah.
It's hard right now. That's just, it's just a neutral fact.
Yeah.
And when, instead of saying like, no, I've got to push through, I've got to, you can choose to call the internet and the internet service provider and do all the things, but you don't have to be angry about it.
Yes, exactly. I think that's right. And when you said, I think you said, if we were in a deposition, I'd ask the court reporter to read the record and I would remember exactly. But you said when something externally dictates how you feel, there's this thought or judgment that says am I that fickle that, something is outside is affecting me? I actually think I am that fickle, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Right. I am okay getting angry and gritting my teeth and being unhappy, because that's part of the human spectrum, right?
Absolutely.
The emotion. I'm okay with it, but I think there's a way to not allow that to determine whether you do it or not. And the best analogy I can give is you're in Texas, so the wonderful Dallas Mavericks just played the Boston Celtics in the finals, and they were down 3-0, right? And they were playing game 4, I believe. No, game 3 in Dallas, and they won by 50 points. During the last 2 minutes of the game, whichever team, the Celtics or whoever, they didn't feel like playing any longer. There was no point. There was 0% chance of padding your stats or playing or doing anything.
Mhm.
And they probably felt like this game is not going our way. Like, we know we're a good team, we're world champion class, we're in the finals. This exact moment is not going my way.
Mhm.
What do? They suited up and they got out on the floor and they did their job,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we talked about this a little bit, like Michael Jordan and
Yeah.
Kobe Bryant, where, for them, they're having an off day. Maybe there's a death in the family or a kid's birthday or something like that, and they don't really want to be there. But you can summon that urgency or that duty or that responsibility that we're talking about with the diaper, of where when it's bigger than you, it's outside of you. Like, that
Mhm.
fan is in the seat that's paid $500 to come
Mhm.
see you, and you're having a bad day, so you're not going to play.
Yeah. I think my whole point with all of this is not so much do you do it or not, or do you
Right.
muscle through it? Like, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I want the listeners to understand that the judgment that you inflict on yourself
Hmm.
because you're not operating at 100%, that is where we get into trouble. And that's where we
Totally.
tend to force ourselves. Like, it's okay. It's okay to be angry. And I'm not saying to cut that emotion off. And, I'm human too. Yes, my sense of inner peace is affected by things like whether people are nice to me or whether I feel heard and validated and understood, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not a realized person in this lifetime yet. And so those emotions, the dragging your feet, all of that is normal and okay. I just feel like there's value in saying, you know what? Things feel hard right now, and I'm not going to fight that it feels hard right now.
Hmm.
I'm going to try to just find a way to not be judgmental that I'm feeling angry,
Right.
or I'm not going to fight that emotion. I'm just going to be with it. And it stinks to be
Hmm.
with that emotion, to sit with something that does not feel good.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's
Yeah.
hard work. But just recognize that that's like a any other emotion. It's temporary. It's going to pass.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that doesn't mean you throw in the towel. It doesn't mean you give up. It doesn't mean that you start burning your bridges. Just learn to sit with the less than great emotions so that
Hmm.
it can pass faster.
Totally. I totally agree with that. Using another sports analogy, when I was a kid, I used to watch Orlando Magic basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dennis Scott, Nick Anderson, Scott Skiles, they used to run like a fast court, or fast paced offense. And I distinctly remember I'd watch every single game in my bedroom. I distinctly remember whenever they're down, whenever things
Mm-hmm.
weren't working, the announcer would come on and say they've got to slow it down and get back to the fundamentals,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I totally agree with you. I think it's not going to feel great all the time. In fact, it shouldn't feel great all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even vacation won't feel great all the time. Remember that story of where I was watching Becky in the middle of
Yeah.
the night? Yeah, even vacation won't feel great all the time. Even the same meal over and over won't feel great all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But can we just accept that it won't feel great and not let that dictate what we do or don't do? Like,
Yeah.
can we just reach an agreement as a collective society that it doesn't feel great to change a diaper in the middle of the night? It doesn't feel great to do work. It doesn't feel great to go to the gym, and it doesn't feel great to have to answer to a spouse and all those things, or take care of
Mm-hmm.
an aging parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
It won't feel great all the time. There's going to be at least 50% of times where it just sucks. But that doesn't dictate whether we do or don't do. What do you think about that?
I think that that's true again for certain things. But then there's
Yeah.
times where I think we try to force through things and we don't need to.
Hmm.
We just it is a luxury. And I think a good example of this is like with little kids.
Yeah.
Where, they're trying to we have an agenda, right? We're trying to get them out the door. We want them to do a certain thing a certain way. And you know what? They're their own person. And it's not always logical or reasonable, but we force, right? We say, like, if you don't listen, then you're not going to, whatever, insert insert consequence that, and you can wind up screaming or yelling, or you can just accept like,
Yeah.
I've got a 3-year-old that wants to learn how to do things themselves, and it's just going to take us a little bit longer, right? Like
Yeah.
you don't need to make it a fight
Exactly.
every single time.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. You don't have to fight with whether the kid or yourself.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. You don't like, and there's things where you're like, well, I wanted to do that, but it's not going to happen. Oh, well, like that does not need to determine the outlook for
Yes.
the rest of your life. It's not permanent. Even we were just in Europe. It was not all rainbows and cotton candy and things. Like it was busy and hectic because we were there for a family wedding. And, that takes a toll when you're navigating jet lag and meeting a bunch of people that you haven't seen in a long time. And you're getting dressed up in clothes that are not comfortable, and you're managing kids. Like not everything was a picture perfect Kodak moment.
Yeah.
Right. And there were things where Manish and I just looked at each other and we were like, this does not feel good. And we're just going to let it go. Like, I'm not going to worry about XYZ.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that wanted to judge myself and be like, well, you should have behaved better with the kids. You should have been more patient. You should have been more this. You should have been more that.
Yeah.
And then there's the part of you that's like, you know what? It didn't feel good in the moment. And that's okay. Like, let that go. Let it just move on by. You don't need to judge yourself or anybody else in the process for it.
Yeah.
And there were equally times in that vacation where we were having an amazing time and everybody was happy and everyone was joyful. And it was a picture perfect moment, right? Didn't dictate. When somebody asks me now, how was that vacation? I don't sit there and say, well, this went wrong and that went wrong. I choose to say it was really, truly an amazing vacation because it was. Right? I want to think of it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think what you said there was really key. If we have like a life expectation and that doesn't line up with the blueprint of how actually things goes, that's the formula for suffering.
Right.
So you can change your expectations, or you can change your life blueprint, your experience of life. And what if you went into that vacation? How long was your vacation?
2 weeks.
Okay. What if you went into it knowing that half of that time is going to be crappy?
Yeah. We actually set an intention before we went, knowing that there were going to be times that it wasn't going to feel as good. Right. And we actually came back to that mantra. We set an intention as a family and said, we choose joy.
Yeah.
So anytime we felt out of sync, was it immediate where we were like, oh, we choose joy?
Yeah.
And then we're just, it's not a switch, but it was a reminder of the fact that we had a choice.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so some of us were able to get back on that, joy feeling faster than others. Sometimes it took a little bit of very unpleasant human expression of frustration and anger and, like parents versus kids and all that, all of the things. But that doesn't mean that we just gave up on the idea that we could have a joyful vacation, right? Yeah. Even today, I don't want to get on my yoga mat right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get on and I'm going to try to do the best that I can. But if I do not have this amazing experience where I'm able to get into all the poses I want to get into, and it doesn't feel just so blissed out, and I think that's where people say, oh, it wasn't a good enough workout.
Yeah.
No, it just was a workout or an experience, or in this case for me, it's a spiritual care ritual that I have. It's not going to feel good. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't worth doing. It was that, or that I am sucky at it. It's just a cycle. There's going to be days that are good, and then there's going to be days that are bad, and that's okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When we start getting into what's good enough, whether it meets our expectations, sometimes we can set ourselves back a little bit. And using Seema's example here of whether her workout's good enough or not, it reminds me of some advice I got when the Apple AirPods came out. I was like, are these the best headphones or AirPods? And um, someone told me exactly which headphones were the best headphones. You want to guess what the answer was, Seema?
I have the ones that you like. That's what I would guess they
Close,
said.
close. It's the ones that you use,
Ah,
right? And so a good enough workout is the one that you showed up for,
yeah.
right? A good enough email is the one you wrote. A good
Mm-hmm.
enough day is the one that you were present.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't good enough doesn't isn't necessarily correlated to whether you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Can we release our expectation that everything's going to feel good all the time? Can we recognize that we're not, some days we're going to be slower than others? That's okay.
Yeah.
Can we recognize that every moment is there potentially to teach us a lesson,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, what is it that you might need to explore? Is it that you need to get more sleep? Is it that you need to
Mm-hmm.
change what time you're working out? Is it that you really do need to check your attitude about why you don't want to do the task at hand?
Yeah.
Gratitude is a great way to shift that, but it doesn't always necessarily even work. There's lots of times where you're like, I should be grateful. How can I be grateful? And you still kind of feel like, you know what? I still don't want to change this dirty diaper.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
okay. That's okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And the final thing I'll say before we wrap up is, I look at like I'll use this, I'll use a bunch of words to describe this feeling, right? Where you're feeling engaged, you're feeling inspired, you're feeling connected to the work you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, you're feeling motivated, you're feeling productive, you're making progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at all of those things as neighbors in the house next door to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? They might be there, they might be on vacation, they might come over, they're just in this house next door to me.
Sure.
And they're totally disconnected from anything that I do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's going to be a time where I'm in my house and my friendly neighbors are there,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still going to go through my day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a time where they're on vacation and I'm still going to go through my day. I'm not sitting there looking at the window wondering when they're going to come back so I can
Mm-hmm.
move on with my day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I tell people that tell me they're in a slump. I'm just not feel like I'm getting done. I don't feel motivated, right? I say, do the things that you need to do to get on with your day. And those friendly neighbors are going to return soon enough.
Mm-hmm.
If you pause your life and the things you need to do, it's going to make the time that passes until they return
Mm-hmm.
that much longer and miserable because you're looking
Mm-hmm.
out the window waiting for them.
Yeah.
So do the things, do the best you can,
Mm-hmm.
and do what needs to be done. And sooner or later, they're going to be back, and then you'll find a tailwind
Yeah.
behind you.
Agreed. The whole point, for me at least, is finding a way to not fight the flow, but fight the ebbs and flows. Just be there, and whatever that looks like for you, to continue moving out through your day, but try to do it from a place of peace.